The Mariners and Padres were two of the most exciting clubs in baseball in 2022, and after a busy offseason with more stars added to the fold on both sides, both teams look poised for deep runs in October. Join me, Ty Dane Gonzalez of Locked On Mariners, and Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres for a pre-opening day crossover to talk about the year to come. Ready, Javi?
Ready.
Let's go.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to a special Locked On Mariners, Locked On Padres crossover episode. My name is Ty Dane Gonzalez, one half of the Locked On Mariners podcast, and I'm joined today by Javier Reyes, the host of the Locked On Padres podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And wherever you're watching this episode, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channels if you haven't already. And if you're listening to a preferred podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review if you like what you hear. On the show today, we'll be talking about two teams that have seen each other quite a lot this spring, and every spring for that matter, and certainly have enough firepower on both sides to meet again on the biggest stage in late October. That would be my Mariners and Javi's Padres. And Javi, the last time you and I did one of these, it was a much different time for both of these teams. The Mariners were 3 games under 500 entering a July 4th series with the Padres, and I infamously said they had no chance to sweep. So what did they do? They swept, and then they swept a few other teams on their way to a 14-game win streak that set the stage for their first playoff berth in 20 years. Meanwhile, you guys got Juan Soto and Josh Hader.
Yeah.
He went all the way to the NLCS. So
it's pretty sick.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. So let's start there. When you look back at 2022 as a whole for your Padres, how do you feel they did?
I feel that AJ Preller completely redeemed himself for some of the many bad moves he made. Some will bring up Adam Frazier, right? Totally fair, which they then have to dump off.
We're familiar with Adam Frazier,
yeah,
too.
You're familiar with Adam Frazier. We had to say, oh, we messed up. Hey, Jerry. Can you take this guy off our hands? So
now, he did have one of the most clutch hits in Mariners playoff history.
He did.
Have to say that, but he was also garbage for most of 2022. So
he's just one of those guys you feel great as being a bench guy. You're like, awesome. If a really big player like I forget who plays second for you guys right now, but whoever does, Colton Wong. That's right, because it's new Colton Wong. If that guy were to get hurt and you're like, cool, we have Adam Frazier for 3 weeks, like you feel pretty good about that, but not like a strong necessarily starter. I really think that Preller hasn't always gotten enough credit for, and somewhat understandably so, for some of the more under the radar moves, because he has had a lot of buzz, right? Trey Turner for Will Myers didn't work out all that great. Austin Nola for Andres Muniz and Ty France, that one blew up in his face horribly. The Mike Clevenger trade for a whole bunch of reasons.
Hold on, Javi. Also, Taylor Williams for Matt Brash.
That's right, Matt Brash, who came in and was awesome for like 2 weeks, and every baseball nerd in the world was jumping into my mentions and being like, these idiots. And then it turned out, relax, he's a young guy with potential, and I'm excited about it.
It's that slider, though. That slider is sexy.
It is pretty hot. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
But I think that he doesn't get as much credit for some of the under-the-radar moves. And don't get me wrong, that's not as fun, right? Because the Soto trade, the Manny Machado extension, the Fernando Tatis Jr. extension, which if people are watching the video, that's my bobblehead guy right here. That, like, those are the flashy moves. Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, all these things. But, there's been some under-the-radar moves that he's made that I think have worked out really well. For years, they've had, like, this weird closer situation, and every year that they lose one, they replace them pretty well, right? Mark Melancon comes in. He does great. They lose Melancon. Everyone's like, you idiots, what are you going to do without him? They bring in Robert Suarez and Luis Garcia. So they've had a knack for those type of moves. Joe Musgrove, I consider a little bit under the radar because I don't think he was like a baseball nerd target. Like people who follow baseball knew who he was, and they were like, yeah, that's a pretty good move. But nobody else really did. And then he, throws the first no-hitter in Padres history.
Right.
And that's just a few moves. I think that he's done a really great job. And for your team, it's putting all the moves together. It's been unbelievable clutch hitting, especially I think it was in 2021 when you guys almost made the playoffs, when it was like the run differential was like -40, but their their clutch rating was like the highest in like 60 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And then of course last year when they finally make it, you have your own big splashes with Castillo and stuff. So there's been a similar vibe, a similar good vibes. Things have been bad for us for a very long time, and turning it around for I think both the Padres and the Mariners, to be honest.
Yeah, both of these teams are kind of on similar wavelengths, even though that the Padres have spent, they've done a lot of this by spending money. And we'll get to Xander, of course, and you mentioned the Manny extension and getting Soto, who's going to get broken off as well, and all that. So we'll get into all that. But for the Mariners, it's been more of a draft develop trade type of build here. But they haven't been afraid to spend money when they feel the need to either, right? Like they get Luis Castillo in, and after 6 weeks of him being in Seattle, they lock him up for the next 5 years. They locked Julio up for essentially his entire career.
I almost forgot about that. Wow.
They gave a pretty decent sized contract to Robbie Ray, about 15 months ago as well. So they are willing to spend, but they've really tried to do this in a way that the Braves have done in the past, the Astros have done in the past, the Cubs, quite a few years back. And so far it's worked for them because their player development system has been one of the best in baseball and is starting to prove that at the major league level now. For the last few years, Colby and I have been singing the praises of the player development in Seattle, but that was because we were just kind of seeing the process of it, and we really liked the process and we thought that it was sound. And now, but we didn't have proof that it would actually come to fruition at the major league level. Now 2022 and really 2021 and even 2020 a little bit was that validation, right?
Yeah.
And so now seeing guys like Logan Gilbert and George Kirby and Julio, obviously that's the big one, and Cal Raleigh, seeing what he was able to do and turning things around this past year. It's really exciting in how they've been able to both balance, being willing to strike at the right times in free agency and on the trade market, and then to develop these guys and to develop guys who also haven't really found their footing in other places, like a Ty France, like a JP Crawford, etc. So these two teams are in a really good spot right now, and I think there's a non-zero chance that we could see these two teams clash in October with the way that they're going.
And hey, what's great about baseball is the dinosaur that is known as baseball is they've updated the rules a little bit, so we are guaranteed to face each other at least one time every year now, which is very, very cool. And I'm excited about it. I don't care what the old heads like Mr. Sully of Lockdown MLB might say. Great pod, of course, that everybody should check out. But yeah, I think that, and that's a good point. They're not in like the S tier Dodgers, Phillies, Yankees, Padres now spending, but they have done stuff. And I don't think that they are one of those teams that earn my criticism, right? Because I've been always very mad at the Brewers. I've been mad at the Guardians, the Rays a little bit, certainly the Oakland A's. And I think the Mariners, they've done some good stuff. I know Robbie Ray is allergic to pitching against a certain team in that division. Allergic to some other things too, I think, but for the most part, Robbie Ray is still like a fine pitcher, and he can really rack up the strikeouts and whatnot. So I think that that's been really good for them. And like you said, with George Kirby, who gotta love anyone with the Kirby name, for being honest. Shout out Jack Kirby. Shout out the pink guy that we all love so much. Really, it's just. But they're very different teams, because the Padres, I think, develop players really well, but then they traded all of them. They traded all of them to get good players, and it turns out those players were pretty good. I still think that your CJ Abrams and Mackenzie Gore could be something really special. And then you've already seen Ty France do well for the Mariners. You've seen all sorts of players, even like a Jack Sawinski, provide a little bit of value to the Pirates. Like there's been stuff out there. They certainly didn't give up nothing. So that's been it's really fun to see, because when I first started hosting this podcast, the previous host of Locked On Mariners, DC Lundberg, it's funny because I was talking to him when we were talking about the Mariners system. We were talking about Kirby. We were talking about Julio Rodriguez, which I was all in on simply for the name. I mean, come on now. Top prospect who's named Julio Rodriguez. What? Give me a break. So that was a thing. And then Emerson Hancock and some of these other guys he hasn't been called up yet, but it really is fun. I do criticize teams that get attached to the farm, but I have to admit the nerd side of me, it is really cool when you see it like really come to fruition. And I think the Mariners have done that.
Yeah, I'm big into that stuff. And, almost to a fault sometimes, right? Because I'm like, look, I find this more interesting than just going out and throwing out a bunch of money at guys, which is fine too. And that's a proven quality way of building a legitimate World Series contender, obviously. And I'm not throwing shade at what you guys are doing either, because you built a really, really awesome ball club. But there's a bunch of different ways of building a team, right? There isn't a particular correct answer. And at the end of the day, right? And we can criticize owners all day long. I'd be happy to do a 4-hour, 5-hour long podcast doing that. But in terms of just the front office people, like, they do have to work within whatever budget is set for them. And at that point, like, when we're talking about baseball, we got to be realistic about that, right? Because then you're just going to have a boring, same old conversation over and over and over again. And that's not fun to me.
Exactly.
Right. So that's why we've always tried to look at it from that point of view of, like, what are they developing? What are they doing in the system? What talent is coming up? How are they all going to make this work? How are they going to make this fit? And that doesn't mean that they're going to be exempt from criticism from us if they don't spend. And we've talked about that a little bit, because that has been a topic of discussion this offseason. And we'll get more into the off seasons for both, the Mariners and the Padres here in just a moment. But, I think overall, I really appreciate this kind of roster build, because it's fun, man. Like, that's really what it all boils down to, is that for me, I find it fun. I find the development, I find drafting, I find trading, I find all that stuff really fun. And so it's kind of just the perfect fit for me with the way that Jerry DiPoto's philosophy has kind of been shown here over the last 8 or so years. So, yeah. So, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about the off seasons for both of these clubs. Busy off seasons. The Padres did a lot this off season. The Mariners didn't do a ton, but they added impact. And that's really what's most important here. So we'll be getting into that in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by, and also Locked On Padres, by the way, is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your professional baseball franchise? Well, your dream can come true, Javi. And this game is definitely for you, buddy. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, managing team finances, scouting and drafting players, managing difficult personalities, navigating your franchise through free agency, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want. It's basically the Jerry DiPoto simulator, or the AJ Preller simulator. So instead of saying chills, DiPoto did it again, you can now say chills, I did it again. Download it now. And Locked On Mariners or Padres listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM, start your dynasty today. And this special crossover episode of Locked On Mariners and Locked On Padres is also brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. For me, getting tickets to games 1 and 2 of the AL Wildcard Series in Toronto was no big deal because I had Game Time right at my fingertips. And I'll be using Game Time again when the Mariners make their way back here at the end of April. So forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners, Locked On Padres crossover special here before opening day. Javi, these two teams, on the day that we're going to be releasing this, I believe this is going to be released on Saturday, the 25th, 26th. We're
Maybe. I might just release it early just for the heck of it, though. You
Yeah,
never
who
know with
knows? You're a wild card, man. You're
me.
crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm crazy.
You don't know what you're gonna
I'm like
do.
the
Yeah.
fella. It's been too quiet for too long. I got to drop a crossover. That's what I do.
So to pull the curtain back a little bit here, we're recording this on March 19th because I'm a diva. I'm a busy boy. I'm going to be on vacation this week, this upcoming week, or this past week for you guys if you're watching. But these two teams next weekend for us are going to be playing one another in back-to-back spring training games to end spring training. I'm actually planning on being at one of those, funny enough. So looking forward to that, hoping that most of the starters are playing in that game because I would love to see Manny and Juan and obviously my boy Nelly Cruz. Another guy that I might see is Xander Bogaerts, who your Padres signed to a massive contract. And it wasn't even the biggest middle infield contract we saw this offseason, but Xander Bogaerts gets broken off for 11 years, $280 million. So what was your reaction to that deal, and what do you think Bogaerts brings to the table? Because we're going to talk about Fernando Tatis here in a moment. I want to ask about him, but let's just talk about shortstop and what Bogaerts brings to the table here.
Look, Diva Gonzalez, thank you so much for asking me that. I'm so excited. For those who don't know, Diva rankings at Locked On. Ty is there's Ty, then there's a couple, then there's 50 feet of normal, and then there's like me,
of course.
I have no ego whatsoever, as everybody knows. I've also been worried. Do you think the skull is maybe scaring people?
Ooh, I'm like getting lost in its eyes.
You're gonna lost it.
Yeah, just keep it there. And I'll like, I'm kind of feeling it. I'm kind of feeling it. Don't mess with the Padres. By the way, we were joking before we got on the show that I'm unintentionally repping the Padres. Like I got the classic Padres colors with the flannel. I got the yellow beanie. Like
like the old
I'm sorry guys.
Padres
I'm not
colors.
only a diva, but I'm also a traitor, apparently. So anyway.
He's cooked.
All right, Xander. Let's stop getting off track.
With Xander. With Xander, look, the Xander deal, first of all, was just wild. It was one of those that when it was rumored, I genuinely didn't believe it. And you would think by now I'd believe anything rumored to AJ Preller. Maybe I'm just an idiot, totally possible, and that I just haven't caught on to the notions and I'm not a fan of the team because I don't live in San Diego. But I think that what was so wild about this one was they have Tatis. They have Ha-Seong Kim, who is a very good player, who might even take another step up this year as he got more reps, in the batting order this past year. And he's got a great glove, obviously, nominated for a Gold Glove. He's fantastic. But with that signing, I was like, yeah, okay. But like really, and then I saw the Trey Turner news where they're like, yeah, they reportedly offered him this much money. I was like, oh my God. Like, this is like a real thing. And then they make the announcement. It's at like 10:30 at night. And I'm losing my mind. I'm just like writing innocently, listening to some lo-fi music. And then this comes in and I have to ramp myself up. I think the Bogaerts deal is just, again, it's just another symptom of this new era of Padres baseball, which is just continually reminding people like me that they're just not stopping, right? Like they just won't stop. If they like a player, they're not letting money interfere with that. And I know that there's been a lot of questions of sustainability, which I talked about on my show, which I think are the wrong questions to ask for any team that spends money. But I also think that the Padres, the Chargers left. And that's one of my things where it's like, I think that's them trying to seize the land a little bit. But the Xander Bogaerts contract, I think the most interesting thing is going to be whether or not his defense last year was legit.
Yeah.
He had a great defensive rating last year, and he's not been, Derek Jeter. I hate when I bring him up because I hate when people jump on him for that and call him overrated. It's so boring. But, a Jeter level, not very good defender. He's just, not great there. He's not a plus there. That's why his, WAR totals weren't always through the roof. But then last year, he was great. So part of me is wondering, okay, even if he doesn't age well with the bat, his hard hit rates and stuff were down just a tad bit last year. He didn't hit that many home runs as many people have pointed out. Well, if he's just a really good, let's say a Ty France type of batter who's going to hit like extra base hits and all that stuff and draw some good walks and play great defense, I'll take that too. I don't necessarily need 30 home run Bogaerts, which he's never really been before anyway. He's just going to be an excellent piece. He's been there before, which I think matters. 2 World Series titles. And every time I would turn on a Red Sox game, that dude always just instills fear in me. So it was just a wonderful signing. And I think that it's just really exciting that now we're all being like, oh, all right, what's next?
Right.
You know, like Jed Bartlett from the West Wing. Like we're just very asking about what's going to happen next constantly, almost to the point where we're being spoiled. But I love it, but it's definitely one of those that in bad for sure. But I think it's different with the Pods. I really do. I think this is a team that they've never ever spent. So for the Padres fans, they're like, we really don't care if it turns badly. And I believe them. I think that if it turns badly in like 5 years, they'll be like, whatever. Like, it's still crazy that we did this. You know what I mean? I think A's fans would feel the same way. If all of a sudden one day or before they traded Matt Olson, they just gave him a 6-year, 250 extension. They'd be like, I don't even care if he turns bad. This is crazy that we did this.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where the Padres are.
So to just kind of go over everything else that the Padres did this offseason, a lot of free agents for you guys. Brandon Drury ends up going to the Angels. Jurickson Profar today, as we're recording this, finally signed with the Rockies. Josh Bell, who you acquired in the Soto deal, ends up going to Cleveland. Sean Manaea goes to the Giants. Will Myers goes to Cincy. Jorge Alfaro, I know that's just from a vibes perspective, pretty big loss for you guys. Goes to Boston.
He had like 6 walk-off wins last year, which is the most by a Padres in like 20 years. So very good vibes for
a certain pitcher who we won't name goes to the White Sox. Pierce Johnson goes to the Rockies. Nomar Mazara goes to the Orioles. Austin Adams, former Mariner, goes to the Diamondbacks. I actually didn't know that happened until I looked at roster resource.
I didn't know it either.
Yeah, well,
Austin Adams isn't bad. He's also hilarious because he hits every single batter that he faces. But.
Yeah, I mean he's another guy that has a great slider. He just can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
All right, so then obviously you add Nelson Cruz, Mariners legend, to the mix here. And really interested to see how he kind of fits into all of this. Matt Carpenter, the mustache, which he capped, and I'm so happy he did. That's amazing.
I know.
Rougned Odor.
Yeah, that one was funny. And I didn't react to it on my show yet, but I cannot stand Rougned Odor.
Yeah.
I just, look, I'm not saying I love Jose Bautista. Like, I understand that he could be a little bit of a pest for some people when you're watching him play. He could be a little annoying, but... And don't get me wrong, he got him. Let me be very clear. He got him. And it wasn't a sucker punch. He got him. Like, I've watched that over and over, but I've never liked how hypocritical the Rangers are, which is why I'm hoping that fellow Locked On host, Bryce Patrick, another diva of the Locked On network, if they don't do well, I always like yelling in their face about how that team literally just cried, like literally on the field, and were so upset that they made like 7 errors in 1 inning. And then they were like, wait, let's use the Bautista bat flip as a scapegoat for why we have to be angry now instead of us being terrible. And then we wait a whole year after. Yeah, it wasn't us. It was, this is what we don't like. It's like, all right, so the Raiders are whack for that. And I'm glad they were in a rebuild for 87 years. But I mean, they did every move this offseason. And you illustrated some of the guys that left. So there's a lot of new stuff going on. And one of the interesting things for the Padres, and I'm going to ask you about some of the new faces for the Mariners, is that everyone's playing a new position with the exception of a couple. So like Manny Machado is going to be playing third base. Shortstop is Xander Bogaerts. That's it in terms of like known and I guess Luis Campuzano, who's been their prospect for a very long time, has had a couple of like off the field incidents that kept him out of the lineup and stuff. But that he's going to be a catcher. And then other than that, Ha-Seong Kim's probably going to play second. You know what I mean? Juan Soto's going to move to left field. Tatis is going to be in the outfield. Jake Cronenworth's going to be at first. So there is a lot of questions for not just the new faces, but the new positions those new faces will be playing. And I think it's exciting, but it is a very fair question. Even if I do think they can play the positions, that's not the question. It's just more, it's a lot of turnover. It's just a lot of, you got to be careful not to build your teams like a fancy baseball team. And I know that happened in 2016, which again, Padres fans were so thrilled because they were like, cool, it's crazy that we're doing this in the first place. We never do this. But the Matt Kemp, Upton, Will Myers, Craig Kimbrell moves were all very, this is fantasy baseball, and you don't realize you got to have something a little bit more cohesive. It's not that bad, but it's still worth bringing up.
Just to finish the additions that you guys made this offseason, Adam Engel.
That's right. I forgot about Adam Engel.
Yeah. Michael Waka. Seth Lugo, who Colby and I love. We've loved Seth Lugo for a while. So that's
everyone wanted that guy this offseason. It makes me excited.
Yeah.
Every team was in on him, it feels like.
He's a high spin rate guy, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Very high spin rate.
Yeah. But yeah, let's I've lost track of time. So we actually need to
That's what
tell the
happens
fine
when you record
folks.
with me.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're having fun, of course. Javi.
Of course,
Time
of course,
flies
man.
when you're having fun. So let's tell the fine folks about FanDuel. Then let's talk about Fernando Tatis. Let's talk about the Mariners offseason. Let's talk about some expectations for these two teams in 2023. All right, folks. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel. Why? Well, the tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time, like I said, to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners, Locked On Padres crossover, as Javi is making a very important text. He's got sources. What are they telling you? Who's signing with the Padres? Who are the Padres trading to the Mariners? Actually, no. Let me rephrase that question. Who is Jerry Dipoto fleecing AJ Preller for this time?
Once upon a time that would have hurt my feelings, and I would have been very sad. But thankfully, it's okay. We persevere out here and we bounce back. No, just a couple people, some celebrities, because as people may know, Emma Stone, big Padres fan,
right.
was at the spring training game, by the way, which was wild. I was like,
I missed her by a weekend.
Yeah,
seriously.
Yeah, right?
I'm going to Peoria. Like, what the hell? I want to see Emma Stone.
I was like, what's going on? Like, all right. I mean, like, aren't you filming like 3 movies with Yorgos Lanthimos? Like, what's going on? So she's just hanging out, I guess. So that's really great.
Well, let me just take a quick break to go over to Peoria, Arizona.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, and she went to the Suns game that night. Crazy stuff. But yeah, man. What was the question?
Well, there wasn't even a question.
Okay,
I was just throwing shade. I was just being me. I was being a diva.
That's right.
Fernando Tatis. Let's talk about him. So his, you mentioned he's going to be playing in the outfield now, and that's part of the the reason for bringing in Bogarts, because they had already experimented with this quite a bit. Him playing in the outfield before the suspension. Suspension is still going on for the first 22-ish days of the season. I think his suspension ends on.
He'll be back in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, suspension ends on 4/20. Hey, memes. That's fun. So yeah, let's just tell me what the expectations are for Fernando, because it's been a really bumpy like 14-15 months for the guy, and he hasn't looked great so far in spring. So what do you think?
Don't care about spring. Manny Machado hit like 120 before his first really truly great year in spring for the Pods. So I don't really care. For me, and this might sound a little hipster of me, but for me, I'm almost more interested in just the vibes of Tatis this year. This is a guy, and hear me out, folks. Hear me out. I think that, Padres fans have been a little bit mean to anybody who has any dissent towards this year for Tatis, coming off the injuries that, like, if you dare say he might have a 135 WRC plus instead of 160 or whatever the heck, they lose it. Great Fangraphs article that basically detailed players who have come back from a similar arm injury. Here's what their things fell by. And the best players on that list fell a little bit, nothing giant. But my thing is more rather, because of Soto, because of Bogarts, because of Manny, because of all the stuff on the team, and underrated bullpen too, in my opinion. He doesn't necessarily have to be that superstar year one, but like a 4 or 5 win player is still going to be like really rad. So for me, I'm just curious to see what's the attitude. I still think it's likely that you're going to get the bat flipping Fernando. How does he play at first base? But or in the outfield, I should say. I am wondering, like, is he going to be as aggressive on the base paths? Is he going to be as aggressive when he's just running in general? Is he going to do the thing where he hits home runs and covers his eye, or mocks people's poses, or, does all that stuff? Because this is a guy coming off of a lot of mistakes. Not like bad against the law, like you are a bad person mistakes, but he's a goober. That's how I view it, right?
Poor
there
judgment,
are a lot more
I guess.
people, poor judgment.
Yeah.
He's 20, like he's like 10 years old, right? Like in the grand scheme of things. And made really bad decisions, but I'm not one of those people who wants to crucify guys for that. I save my hatred for, honestly, people who aren't athletes in the world. But for me, it's more like, is he going to still be like that? Because he earned the ire that happened on top of the motorcycle stuff, and you just casually being like, which one? And then that, and then you get popped for the PEDs right after they get Juan Soto. Like, I've had some issues with Tatis, and I think it's totally understandable. And I think that the players' reactions from last year, like Joe Musgrove and Manny and AJ Preller. There was another guy who we won't talk about that had reactions, and I called it. I did not. I thought it was hypocritical of him. But, in general, that's what I want to see from him. How aggressive is he going to be at the plate? Is he still going to have that kind of just that swagger to him? I think that's going to be really interesting to see. I would vote yes, because it seems like he's kind of, he's at Fan Fest. He's still got a little bit of nice stuff going on, but he's got to overcome some things. And I think it's going to be good for him, though. And I think he's going to return to being, next to Ohtani, probably the most exciting player in the league.
Yeah, you don't want him to sap everything that he is, everything that made him great and still makes him great, right? You still want him to be himself, but you just want him, when he's away from the team, when he's away from the cameras, when all the attention is off of him, you want him to be able to make better choices and whatnot. So, yeah, hoping the best for him, because I mean the game is better with him and with him performing well than without.
Absolutely.
So it just kind of like last year when the suspension went down, it came down, and even before that with the injuries and everything, it just kind of felt like something was missing from baseball, because he was such a, I mean, he was the face of baseball, one of the faces of baseball for the last 2 years, and then you just suddenly he's just gone like that.
And in no fault to his play, right? Like, it's either been injuries or goober stuff on the side, right? I mean, I remember when he had that swing that first popped his shoulder against the Dodgers, I believe, and everyone on Twitter was just like in a nightmare, at least like for baseball Twitter and whatnot. And it's going to be really great to have him back. But I know, this is a pretty rough transition, but you guys have your own superstar, like freak athlete who's really fun and whatnot. Julio Rodriguez. I'm wondering, didn't have the best second half in the world, not the best in the world. He stopped having the 87 stolen base pace, right? I know that was a thing for a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, what is the next step, I guess, for the M's? Because is it just, because in fairness, I don't think they made like this giant move this offseason, but you mentioned the ones that they did make with Colton Wong, with Teoscar, like, just really solid, refining the edges. It feels like a team that is just how like when you pick Mario and Mario Kart, like just it's everything overall is just medium. It's just solid all around.
Yeah.
There's no like giant weakness on the team. Oh, they don't have, more than 2 super home run guys. But whatever, it's okay, because Ty France is really cool and Colton Wong will give you some good defense, hopefully. Like, it's just really refined, right? Oh, Robbie Ray scares us sometimes. Well, that's what they brought in Luis Castillo for, and Logan Gilbert, or who I think is a sneaky Cy Young bet. Shout out to FanDuel. And George Kirby, like that, those guys can improve. What is kind of the vibes with that team right now? Because I'm wondering, like, because they did the most important thing, which was breaking the drought. So it's almost like, I mean, I saw your videos when you guys broke the drought. I saw them. Oh, I saw the tweets. My man's was out here, absolutely going off. So I'm wondering, like, what is the expectations, I guess, for the Mariners?
Well, yeah, it feels great to just kind of get the proverbial monkey off your back, right? Having that shadow cast over you for so long, and as each year goes by, it grows and grows and grows. So just be away from that and not have that extra thing that everyone is focused on and everyone is ultimately just fixated on and can't get past, is great, because now it's just all about ball, right? It's all about, like, what are we going to do to win the ALS? What are we going to do to win a World Series? That's really what the focus is now. And it's because like even the players were talking about it. Even even Jerry DiPoto and Scott Service were talking about it constantly, about ending the drought. It's something that certainly was on a lot of these people's minds, even when they weren't a part of, they've been a part of the drought for like 6 of the 20 years, right? Like, it's not their fault they're in the drought. Like, they've contributed to it, of course, but like, it wasn't their thing, but it wasn't their cross to bear, but they did. Right. And so, and they finally, were able to band together here and ended after a couple close calls over the last few years. And so now being able to go into this year where it's just all the pressure of that is off. Amazing. does so much for you from a mental side of things, where now you can just focus on ball. I want to quickly go back to what you were saying about Julio in terms of the second half. I mean, he got hurt, right? He had a wrist injury after the Derby that hindered him a little bit, and then he had a back thing that flared up in Oakland a little later on, and they were just like, hey, like, don't steal bases, we don't want you doing that, we don't want you to risk getting hurt, so because we want to go into the postseason with you. Like, we have no chance if you're not a part of this thing going into the postseason. And then, like you said, right, it was about complementing the rest of the roster this offseason. And there were some issues with the offseason, and I could go on about this for 15-20 minutes, so I'll try to keep it short and brief. But I still think they're a bat short. I still think that they
maybe I feel like Conforto was attached to every team in baseball.
Conforto was someone that and plus he's from the area, right? So it made sense on that level as well. But obviously there was some concerns about the shoulder and frankly getting involved with Scott Boras, right, on a player like that. That's a delicate situation. So the Mariners didn't really do much in terms of free agency, and really didn't add a ton of payroll this offseason when you really think about it, because like the Colton Wong deal was pretty much a wash when you factor in Jesse Winker's contract and Abraham Toro's contract going to Milwaukee. That was pretty much a wash.
Forgot about Winker.
Teoscar ends up making $14 million in arbitration, so that's the heftiest ad. And then they gave AJ Pollock $7 million, so that's created a conversation in the fan base about not taking advantage of this opportunity, and really taking advantage of this opportunity that they have and just going all in on it. The thing though is, like, again, this goes back to the conversation that we had earlier on in the show about how just a boring of a conversation it would be to just constantly bicker about the spending and everything, which, like, there is a time and place for that. But for Jerry Dipoto, if John Stanton, the Mariners owner, tells him you have this strict budget, you have to work within it, he's got to do there's nothing that he can really do about that other than like say, hey, can you give me more money? No. Okay, well, then I just have to work with this, right? So his job is to give himself as much flexibility as possible, and that's what he ultimately did, right? Because they're going to need to add at some point over the course of the season to get better, because that's what they've always done, that's how they've always operated. So if they need to add payroll, he's got to keep that flexibility there. Adding Teoscar Hernandez, amazing. I'm a huge Teoscar fan because I live in Toronto. I swear every single Blue Jays game I've gone to, he's homered in. Like, dude's just incredible. And from a vibes perspective, I mean, the Mariners have one of the best clubhouses in all of baseball, just in terms of the personalities. There really aren't, at least in terms of what is shown to the public, there aren't really any despicable people on this roster, and that's great. That's great, because I love rooting for all of them. And so he just adds to that because he's a great clubhouse guy, and he adds a lot of thump. But I mean, like, at his best, at his 100th percentile, it's like having another Julio Rodriguez in your lineup. Like, he's a fringe MVP candidate at his best. And so that's really exciting. The defense, that's another story.
Defense is for nerds. Look at the Phillies. They made the World Series.
Exactly. Defense is for nerds. And most importantly, he gives you more probability than anything Mitch Haniger could give you. And that's the thing. That's the thing that's blown my mind this offseason. And I've ranted and raved about this on my show, so a lot of our listeners are probably rolling their eyes like, oh, Ty's doing the thing again. But the thing that's blowing my mind this offseason is the amount of people within the fan base that are like, the Colton Wong and Teoscar Hernandez deals are lateral moves. No. Teoscar Hernandez and Mitch Haniger are in two completely different universes from one another. Colton Wong is a significant, he's not Trey Turner, he's not Xander Bogaerts, which everyone wanted.
That's what I was about to say. Like, in a time, not trying to throw shade at JP Crawford, but because he certainly is not the way Padres fans felt about, like, our weak link, Eric Hosmer, but
sure.
In an off season where you had Turner, Correa, Bogaerts, are you wondering if that's our one big lineup hole? I imagine that Mariners fans were a little disappointed there.
Yes. So that was a letdown for a lot of folks, but I mean, it became clear, like, the years and the money was just too prohibitive for this team in particular. Now that's a whole conversation. That's a whole rabbit hole that we could go down, right? With the spending and everything. But nevertheless, Colton Wong is still a significant upgrade over what they fielded at second base last year. Adam Frazier, like we said, was mostly garbage last year. He had the big hit in the playoffs. He had a hot start to the season. That was about it. That's as far as his contributions were. So that's a significant upgrade. Colton Wong's made a swing change, as of a couple of years ago. He's been a 115, 116 WRC plus guy the last couple of years. There's track record there. There's something to believe in there. But yeah, again, I think they're a bat short. We'll see how AJ Pollock plays out this year. But the thing that I think a lot of fans are kind of overlooking here, and even pundits, even like, the projection models and whatnot that are overlooking, is the fact that they're going to get a full season of Luis Castillo. They're going to get a full season out of George Kirby. They're going to get a full season out of a good Cal Raleigh. They're going to get a full season of a good Andres Munoz. Like, while that's not the exciting thing, yeah, I know. Well, that's not the exciting thing, right? It's not the exciting thing to be like, well, the additions that you made at the deadline or the additions that you made over the course of the season are kind of also part of the additions that you made this offseason. It's true, though. Like, the Mariners are not, I wouldn't say that they're significantly better than they were at the end of the season, but they're significantly better. It's like night and day from where they were at the start of of last season, at opening day last season. And that's what's most important here, right? Because you cannot complete a roster build over the course of one offseason, no matter who you are. Even if you're the Mets spending all the money that you are, even if you're the Padres are going to have to add at some point. You know that. We all know that, right? So roster building isn't this linear thing. And so the point is that you need to get off to a hot start. Are they positioned to get off to a hot start? Yes. Are they positioned to keep pace with the Astros? Absolutely. And are they in position to get better significantly at the deadline, given everything that they have in their farm system and everything that they're going to still add? Because I don't know if you know this, they have 3 first-round picks in the draft.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so they're going to be able to add a lot of talent to their farm system, and that in turn should allow them to be a little more aggressive on the trade market with some of their guys as well, if someone like, say, Brian Reynolds becomes available.
No.
So,
No, can't do it. So
Mm.
he's a name that I refuse to say on my show anymore. It's a new rule of mine.
Yeah. I
just can't do it.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know if you know this, but we do these trade shows, like where like Fan Fiction Friday, where our listeners submit trades, and like we had to ban Brian Reynolds.
It was that bad?
It was just every other trade was Brian Reynolds. It was last year was like every other trade was Jose Ramirez. We had to ban Jose Ramirez. We had to ban Ronald Acuna when those trade rumors started happening in this offseason.
Man, I remember those.
Yeah. So we had to ban Acuna. We had to ban Ohtani. There was a few other names that we had to ban, but yeah, Brian Reynolds was one of them. So I get it. I understand.
Was the dumb. At worst, he's a 3-4 win player, and they got him for like the easiest contract in baseball. He's not going anywhere, guys. Stop it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, look, it's funny because there's so many different, there's so many similarities. One with just the trades between our two teams, right? With Munoz, which hurt my feelings, and Ty France and all that stuff. And then on top of that, they've got just the turnaround thing that we've been talking about all show.
Yeah.
And then they've got a Titan in their division. For you guys, it's the Astros. For us, it's the Dodgers. So look, we're in the same boat, man. I think we're both the good guys. That's how I would say.
I'll say this, and this will make your listeners very happy. I think the Dodgers are painfully mid. Like I think the Padres. Did I say the Padres? I meant the Dodgers.
No, the Dodgers. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Did I say the Dodgers? I really hope that I said the Dodgers. Okay. All right. Now I'm in that state where I'm like doubting myself. Yeah. Anyway, so
I got you.
The Dodgers didn't do anything this offseason.
Yeah.
Like they didn't.
But I don't know, man. I can't trust it. I know it's easier for you from afar, but I've been seeing them clips of Jason Hayward at spring training. I'm getting nervous, man. I'm getting
Jason Hayward revival.
Not like prime Jason Hayward, but like, oh, we just turned this guy into a 2-win player.
Yeah,
I know that doesn't sound incredible, but that adds up. Same thing for Syndergaard.
Yeah.
Here's
2019 Hunter Pence.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh no, this is gonna. It just makes me nervous. But it is true that this is the first time in a while where there's a genuine you won't be laughed out of the room if you say that the Pods can win the division. And also just based on overall, they have to lose it at some point. You know what I mean? They've won it 15 years in a row, so it's not impossible. And I think that alone is exciting.
So the thing with the Dodgers, right, is they have Mookie, they have Freddie, they're still gonna be a 90 win team, right? Sure, but like they lose Gavin Lux, they lose, unfortunately to an ACL injury, they lose Trey Turner in the offseason, and they're replacing those spots with like Miguel Rojas and like Max Muncy, who I like Max Muncy, but like, come on, like again, there's a lot missing there for the Dodgers. And I don't know, like depth has been able to carry them. Like they've had injuries, they've dealt with all this stuff, and depth
literally
has
Walker
really carried
Buehler,
them.
Their Cy Young candidate, gets hurt and they still have a top 5 ERA in baseball. Like that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah. So like the luck in the development and all that stuff is amazing for the Dodgers, but I think the Padres should be the favorites heading into this year. I'm picking the Padres to win the division.
I like it. I hope so, man. But either way, hey, look, it's crazy times. It's really fun times for both of these ball clubs, and I think that, I don't know, it's fun. Like, why not? You know what? Why can't they do it? You know what? Why not? Why can't?
And look, man, from a Mariners perspective, like talking about injuries, right? Gavin Lux with the Dodgers, Jose Altuve with the Astros. As of today, we find out that a lot
of comparisons with our teams right now. It's crazy.
Yeah. So, Altuve gets hurt in the World Baseball Classic last night for us. Turns out broken. What was it? Broken wrist, broken thumb.
I think it was broken thumb. If I'm not
broken
mistaken.
broken thumb. He's going to be out at least 8 to 10 weeks, and that's not accounting for rehab and all that stuff. So who knows when he's going to come back? Who knows what he's going to look like when he comes back? That's a major hit. They obviously lost Verlander in free agency. The Colors is going to start the year on the IL as well. Like, still a really good rotation. Still really good rotation with Valdez and Javier. We've talked about this, but again, this whole offseason this whole offseason, the conversation has really been dominated by this whole, like, how are the Mariners going to close the gap between them and the Astros? I think the gap is more or less closed, like, at this point, because, like,
Here we go.
I really do.
Go ahead now.
I really
Unleash the diva.
I've already said this. The diva has already been unleashed, and it's out there. And Astros fans, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Astros fans love to seek out content that has, that talks about them.
I've heard.
Yeah. So we've heard it. We've heard, oh no, this team is still a 100+ win team after you lost a perennial Cy Young contender and didn't do anything to replace them. Okay, just saying, but. Yeah, I think there's an opening here. I won't go as far as to like guarantee the Mariners are winning the AOS. That's a little too hot takey for me. I know Locked On would love me to say that, but I'm not going to go that far. But for both of our teams, I think there's a very real possibility here that both of these teams can win their division.
I think for both of us, it would not surprise me if we get those Jeff Passan notifications that are like, if you're not watching Mariners Astros right now, tune in, because like this game has been amazing. Right. And same thing for Dodgers Padres. I think there's going to be a lot of both teams. There's a good chance that you just get some I don't know which way it'll go, but that you get those really, like, dare I say, rivalry type of, matchups. And I know the Dodgers and Padres, the sparks have already flown. Maybe that happens for the Mariners a little bit more. Julio just says something to Kyle Tucker. I don't know. And then he slides into second on a stolen base and they win. I don't know. Right. But that's how it starts. And it starts with being competitive, and both teams are through the roof with that. And I can't wait. I really think that it could be the best divisional races in the league this year. Maybe the NL East, only because that division is consistently absurd. Every year that it just does not know how to calm down. It is the always sunny of baseball divisions. It just refuses to stop. Refuses. It's
on its 16th season.
Yeah, or in the case of One Piece, another thing that refuses to stop. You know what I mean?
Who is the Danny DeVito of the NL East?
I mean, do we have to say the Marlins? I feel like we kind of have to.
They're the Frank Reynolds.
Yeah, right. Like
Luis Ariza's toe knife.
I love how I barely know anything about Sunny, but I still got that.
Or is Luis Ariz Rumham? That's the question. For our Always Sunny fans in the chat,
Always Sunny fans who know baseball from the NL East. The Venn diagram must
help
be
us out with those. Help us out with those.
Yeah, help us out with those. Yeah, for sure. But hey, man, look, if people can't tell, we're both excited, and I can't wait for this year, man. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty stoked about the year, and I'm pretty stoked to just get baseball back, man. It's been a long time, and I've been itching because, again, like, seeing this team finally make the playoffs, getting to see it in person too, just there's a different level of excitement for me that I haven't really felt going into a baseball season really in my life, because the last time the Mariners made the playoffs before last year, I was 5, so I don't really remember that. So
I get it.
So yeah, man, good luck to you guys. We're gonna be seeing you guys here, I think, in May or somewhere along. I should have looked that up before we started recording.
I should have looked that up too. That's crazy. That's funny. I feel
But,
like I was about to and then just forgot because I looked at the spring training game and I was like, oh, we play each other soon. It's like, no, wait, well, that's the spring training game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see, May. Let's see, May. No, it's not in May.
It's not in May. I was a liar.
It's in June. June 6th and 7th.
There we go. All right, so June 6th and 7th. We'll need to do this again.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And hopefully everybody enjoyed this chunky boy length pod, because I know I had a blast recording it.
We're so sorry, Jeff Carr, host of the Locked On Reds podcast and head of Locked On MLB division. Sorry for how long it is.
It's okay. I think, look, you do a lot for them. This one was for us.
You and also you put me and Javi together, like, it's going to be a long podcast, because we never meet the 30-minute criteria. We never do. We never
not
do.
Not once in my life. No.
That's gonna do it for our show. For Javier Reyes, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go and follow our shows on Twitter at @LO_Mariners and at @LO_Padres. Follow our personal accounts at Dane Gonzalez, DaneGnzlz, and Javi Peno. That's JAVII, yes, 2 I's, PENO. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. With that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.